this is my thing. Give a woman a choice. This doctor told me I had no choice. I asked her, I said, is there anything I can do? No, you just, because you where they are, and I did have a choice. So let me decide. You can say a myomectomy is going to be a Band-Aid. Hysterectomy will get rid of your problem for the rest of your life. What do you want to do? And then let me decide. Don't tell me I don't have a choice. Hey, my name is PaSean Wilson-Ashley, and I'm entering a world gone good for the third time.
Well, hello, my name's Steve, and this is the place where we celebrate everyday people making good happen each and every day. Welcome to World Gone Good. If you like the good we got going on, you gotta share the good we got going on with your friends, frenemies, and yes, even your enemies, especially your enemies. Shower them in good, I say. We appreciate it so much when you post us on your social media. Email or text a link or simply tell someone in person, hey, have you been listening to World Gone Good? Let's spread some good together, shall we? Okay, so we are fast approaching our 200th episode, which is mind-blowing to me. As we move one episode closer week by week, we thought it would be fun to reconnect with some of our and your favorite good guests. We had Ellie Lax and Jay Weiner join us 2 weeks ago for a special two-parter. They are returners. Well, she is. You should check that one out if you haven't listened to it yet. And today we go to the way back by reuniting with a guest from our launch, our very first day of this here show. PaSean Wilson-Ashley is a vegan baker and ice cream maker. How do you like that, rhymey rhyme? An actress and performer and a documentarian. She's here to talk about just that, her documentary, The F Word. This is one woman's good journey to taking control of her own body and health, and her mission to encourage other people to do the same. This is PaSean Wilson-Ashley, and here comes her good story. Well, we have been reconnecting with some of our favorite guests as we hurtle toward our own 200th episode. And we are diving deep today because we are going all the way back to my guest from episode number 3 and episode number 61. You, PaSean Wilson-Ashley, were the launch day. You were also my test show. You're the first show I ever recorded. Ever.
Wow.
Yes. And so I pointed that out. Yeah, I pointed that out when we got together for the 1-year anniversary. It's just crazy. So welcome back. Let's do a quick little catch up. You are Mama Auntie's Vegan Delights.
Goodies.
Oh, how did I fuck up that? My whole show's called Good. All right, tell everybody what that's about.
Yes, it is a vegan dessert company. Started in 2018, went through the pandemic. Actually did pretty good during the pandemic because everybody had a sweet tooth, and came out of the pandemic and acquired a number of restaurant clients. Our most recent is Ubuntu LA, a West African-inspired vegan restaurant in West Hollywood. Amazing food. You can get our ice cream there a la mode, or you can get it on top of one of their West African desserts. And then we do farmers markets. Everything is organic when possible, and the stuff tastes too good to be vegan.
Yum! You've been doing this a while now.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever revealed any of your secrets?
No, never. Won't happen.
Okay, cool. I love it. You are a actress. You're a performer. We did a play reading that we got to talk about at some point again. I got to find more money. I got to find money to put up a goddamn play. But you've also, and we talked about this on the 1-year anniversary show, and that's why you're here today. You started a project called The F Word.
Mm-hmm.
and it is all about fibroids. And I want to start here, if you're comfortable. Tell everybody your story,
Yeah, sure.
your own personal fibroid story. And this is going to sound weird. What's good about it?
What's good about my fibroid story? Well, I'll start there then. What's good about my fibroid story is that the journey led me to discover one of my missions is to educate women and men, to educate the world about fibroid tumors. My story started with me not even knowing anything about fibroid tumors. I went for a routine OBGYN. And doctor said, "Oh, you have fibroids. Don't worry about them. They're small. We'll just, watch and wait and see what happens." And I left there feeling like, wow, I found the best doctor in the world. She didn't want to cut me or anything. She just said, watch and wait. I didn't know doctors did things like that. Oh, I'm so excited. She's great. Then a couple of years later, I went back for another yearly exam, and this doctor says, "Oh my God, you have fibroids. They're gigantic. You need a hysterectomy."
Jesus.
And I was like, "What?" I mean, I was floored, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Is there any other treatment options?" She was like, "No, the size, where they're located." She said, "And not only that, you can have a stroke by your next period because you're anemic." I think my hemoglobin was like, I don't know, 7, maybe it's supposed to be 14. I don't remember, but it was really low. And I was like, and she said, "You can have a stroke by your next period." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? I'm going hiking as soon as I leave here." She said, and she started hitting herself in the head. This doctor, I won't even say where. It's one of the SAG places. She starts hitting herself in the head, and she says, "You are in denial. You are in denial. It's just your personality. That's why you're able to do what you're able to do. But I'm telling you, you can have a stroke by your next period because you're too anemic."
Wait, hold
And
on, hold on. How old are you when this is happening?
I think I was maybe early 40s, maybe 40, 41, something like that.
You're a Black woman.
Black woman, never had a child, and she's telling me that my only treatment option for my fibroid tumors is a hysterectomy. And I said, "Well, that's not gonna happen." And I left there. I went to my car, and I just remember I just cried. I just thought it was the end of the world. And but I knew I wasn't going to have a hysterectomy, at least without trying some other things. So I started researching all kinds of holistic things. I started out with acupuncture and Chinese herbs. I did a Dr. Sebi program, which is an alkaline diet where you can't eat anything that's not the way God originally created, and you'd be surprised what foods we eat that are not the way God, I'm doing all of this in air quotes, originally created. So like you could do, say, maybe you could do broccoli, but you couldn't do cauliflower. That's just an example. Those are not the items. But there are certain things that are actually genetically modified, even before we knew about genetic modification, that are not the way they were originally. Supposedly, originally carrots were purple, but they did something to them, so now that they're orange. And then now watermelon doesn't have seeds now. Originally, watermelon had seeds, so I would have to eat watermelon with seeds. It was a very extensive diet. I ended up getting super, 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 super skinny, but my fibroids didn't go away. And I tried a number of, I was willing to do everything, including voodoo and Santeria, rather than have a hysterectomy. So after trying all of the things that I encountered and researched and people told me about, I still had fibroids. The symptoms got better, but I still had fibroids. And so one day I ran into a friend of mine at Whole Foods, and she told me about a woman, OBGYN in Beverly Hills. She said she was an African-American gynecologist, and that she had just done what's called a myomectomy on this woman, and how she said, I'm a graphic here. You can edit this out if you want. But she was like, she had fibroids that were wrapped all the way around her vagina. And she said just like that. And, and that this woman was able to save her uterus and take out those fibroids. I said, okay, I'm going to go to that woman and see what she says. I went to the woman. She examined me. She immediately said, "I can do a good job on you." And I said, "What? A hysterectomy?" She said, "Oh, no, I can do a myomectomy." And I just started crying. I was like, oh my gosh, finally. She said, yes, I can get these fibroids out. She said, I wouldn't do a hysterectomy on you. I do my best to do a myomectomy on people. And that's what I would do for you. So fast forward to, I get the surgery, and this is what leads me to doing the documentary. I get the surgery. I'm in the recovery room, and my husband and my sister, they run in there and they said, you're not going to believe this. While we were in the waiting room, this doctor comes out and he says to this woman that was sitting next to us, I'm so sorry. I know your sister was only 25 years old, but I had to give her a hysterectomy for her fibroids. And that's when I said, I'm doing a documentary. I had never done a documentary or even thought about a documentary. All I had done was be an actress my whole life. But those words spilled out of my mouth. I'm doing a documentary on this. And so, yeah, I mean, what could have happened, I don't know, because I didn't talk to the doctor. Anytime you, and I don't know if it has changed, it probably hasn't. But anytime you sign the release papers or whatever the papers are, you have to sign before an operation. What it says on there is the doctor can convert a myomectomy, if that's what you're supposed to be getting, to a hysterectomy if they deem it necessary to save your life. So meaning like maybe you start bleeding too much, or maybe, hey, they've only allocated 4 hours for this surgery and it looked like it's going to take 10. They got another surgery lined up. Who knows which one it was in her case, but they can convert it into a hysterectomy. So the girl went in for a myomectomy and it was converted into a hysterectomy. And which is what my doctor said she would never do. So the reason why I was able to actually do or start doing the documentary, even though I had no experience at all, is that I would just tell people, almost like I had Tourette's. I would run into people to say, hi, how you doing, PaSean? I'm doing a documentary on fibroids. It would just like spill out of my mouth. I would just tell everybody that I was doing a documentary on. If I hadn't shot anything, hadn't done any, didn't know anything. So I did that Tourette's thing to a friend of mine from New York who randomly called me, who is a director, had directed me in a number of projects. And I said that. He said, oh my God, my wife just had a hysterectomy for fibroids. Okay, I want to do this with you. Set up the interviews. I will fly wherever we need to fly, and we will interview people. And that's how I got my partner, Roderick Giles. And so that's what started me.
So many questions I have for you. Can we go back?
Yeah.
No, seriously, can we go back to your first set of doctors?
Mm-hmm.
White doctors, black doctors?
It was a white doctor who first told me, and then I went to a black doctor within that same network, and I went to her actually after. That's right. I went to the black doctor after I had met with the one in Beverly Hills who said she could give me a myomectomy, and I told her I was going for a routine physical, and she said, "Oh, you have these fibroids," and I said, "Yeah, I came here, and the doctor here, she told me I needed hysterectomy." She said, "Yeah, you do." She said, "Because they're so big and you have so many." I said, "Well, I just met with a doctor in Beverly Hills and she said she can give me a myomectomy." She said, "Really? I don't know how she's going to do that." Well, I wish her luck.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she said, "Yeah, I wish you luck too." She said, "But I don't know how she's going to do it." And so this is the thing. In doing the documentary, I interviewed a number of doctors. One of them was Dr. Stanley West, who wrote a book called The Hysterectomy Hoax. First of all, I read the book. There was a phone number in the book. And I just called the phone number and said, "Hey, I just read the book." And his secretary answered. "And I want to interview Dr. West." She said, "Oh, okay, let me see if I can find him." She put me on hold. He gets on the phone.
Oh my God.
He said, "Darling, I don't know why no one has ever done a documentary about this before. Whatever you need, you can interview my patients. You can film me doing." He said, "Whatever you need, darling." And so I was able to film him doing a myomectomy. I filmed him doing a number of filmed a number of his patients. And basically what he said is he's trained many, 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 many doctors over the years because he was the head of OBGYN at St. Vincent's in New York City in the Village. And he said, but what most of the doctors that he trains they decide to do hysterectomies anyway, because you can make more money doing hysterectomies because you can do more of them in a day. So insurance wise, they cost about the same, but if you can do like 10 hysterectomies as opposed to 4 myomectomies a day, you're going to make more money. So he said, I train doctors to do myomectomies, but they prefer to do hysterectomies. And I'm going to add this too. And that's not just the money. That's the big factor, but also, when you have fibroids, if your body is prone to producing fibroids, you have a high estrogen producing body. That's what feeds fibroids. That's what makes them grow. then even if you have a myomectomy, which is what I had, that is the surgery that preserves your uterus but takes the fibroids out, you usually get fibroids again. So they're also thinking, why put a Band-Aid on it? A myomectomy, they consider a Band-Aid. The gold standard of treatment, even to this day, is a hysterectomy, because then you don't have to have multiple surgeries. And I have to tell you, in the documentary, I interviewed some women, 15 years ago, 12 years ago when I started the documentary, who had a myomectomy and then eventually had another myomectomy and then eventually had uterine artery embolization and then eventually had a hysterectomy. So doctors consider this is the gold standard. But this is my thing. Give a woman a choice. This doctor told me I had no choice. I asked her, I said, is there anything I can do? No, you just, because you where they are, and I did have a choice. So let me decide. You can say a myomectomy is going to be a Band-Aid. Hysterectomy will get rid of your problem for the rest of your life. What do you want to do? And then let me decide. Don't tell me I don't have a choice.
Right. And this is what I want to talk about in that same note is this is your body and you're going to somebody not fully aware of what's happening in your body, maybe having an understanding of what you Googled, or at that time, you might not have been able to Google. You might have done some research, but you still don't exactly know. So there's a trust factor here. You go to a doctor and you want the best doctor. You want them, first of all, to listen to you, right? Mm-hmm. I went in, I'll tell this, it's not the same. I went in one time, I had a horrible ear infection. I didn't have a doctor. It was back in my 20s. This is 30 years ago. I went in. This doctor came in, took one look at me, didn't even look at my ear, and said, "You need an AIDS test." And I said, "Excuse?" Yeah. I go, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "You need an AIDS test. Go. I'm going to have her come in and give you an AIDS test." He walked out. The pain in my ear was so bad. I started crying because I was so like, "Oh my God." The nurse comes in. She was like rubbing my shoulder, getting a needle ready. I go, "I'm not taking." He just said an AIDS test. That, first of all, there's no such thing as an AIDS test. There's an HIV test that you take, right?
Right.
So that immediately clues me into, you looked at me, saw a gay man, and said, he's got a disease. You didn't even touch me. I was so frustrated. I wound up leaving, going to another doctor who I spoke to, and the doctor said he didn't look at what? Came over, looked in my ear, looked up my nose, said, "Oh yeah, you got a really bad infection. You need some antibiotics." And that was it. So there's a trust factor.
And there's a bias.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, even I talk about in the pilot episode of my podcast, I talk about my experience of where I was having pains in my womb. I didn't know what it was at the time. And I went to the doctor and I was there with my husband and he starts giving me a rape kit.
Right in front of your husband.
Right in front of my husband.
Jesus Christ.
Are you kidding? My sister actually ended up having a burst appendix one time. She actually sued and won a lot of money in New York. But she went from doctor to doctor. They gave her a rape test. They gave her a sex test for sexually transmitted disease. They did all of this stuff because she's a black woman coming in. Why are you assuming somebody's raped? I don't know. That's the craziest thing. I don't know the connection between black women and rape and why you would do a rape test if a woman doesn't come in and say she was raped. Anyway, she sued and she won a lot of money because she was mistreated by a number of hospitals before she finally went to a doctor and it turned out it was just a burst appendix.
But you want to find somebody you can trust, right?
Yeah.
And somebody you can be hand in hand with. And especially with this is like, here you have somebody who's offering, you found your doctor that you trusted, but then at the same time, did you have a hesitation of the Band-Aid you just talked about?
Of the first doctor who told me watch and wait, no, I was just elated. I was like, oh, she doesn't want to do any kind of surgery. I didn't even know about hysterectomy or myomectomy. But the fact that she said, just watch and wait and see what happens. The problem with watching and waiting is if you don't do anything different from what you was doing before you found out you had a problem, you just watching and waiting for it to get worse.
Right.
You got to do something different. So if there's a doctor, a holistic doctor, hopefully somebody that really believes in the body as a whole, says, hey, you have these fibroids. Maybe you should try changing your diet, your stress, your this, your that. Should try something while you're watching and waiting. Because if you're just watching and waiting, you're just going to watch and wait. And then years later, you're going to be told you have fibroids so big you need a hysterectomy. Rhonda Ross, she's in the second episode. This is Dinah Ross's oldest daughter. Same thing. She was told, watch and wait. And then, next time she went there, oh my God, your fibroids are gigantic. You need a hysterectomy. It's just like it's got to change. So that's part of my mission, is to really, get the information out there so women can have the information and they can make informed choices.
Okay, I want to talk about that mission, but I want to go back to one last thing before we
Mm-hmm.
do. Tell everybody the difference between a myomectomy and a hysterectomy.
A myomectomy is an operation where fibroids are removed from the uterus, but the uterus is still intact. With a hysterectomy, meaning you can still have children afterwards.
Right.
A hysterectomy, you cannot have children after a hysterectomy. So, and the procedure is much more difficult. You can imagine how intricate it would be to actually be cutting in the womb and trying to save the womb and doing all that. That's very intricate and takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of skill. A hysterectomy does not take as much. You nip, nip, snip, 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 and you just pull it out. So it's a much more intricate and much more difficult procedure to do a myomectomy rather than a hysterectomy. But you can have children afterwards. I interviewed a number of women who had myomectomies who were able to have children. My sister actually lost a child because of her fibroids. She had fibroids, and the fibroids started growing because she was producing more estrogen because she was pregnant, and the baby started growing, and they were just competing for space, and the fibroid won, and she actually had a miscarriage, and that happens often.
Now, you started off doing a documentary, so you were filming. You were visually filming, and you
Yes.
started this journey. When did you start this whole filming journey?
I need to find some of the release papers I had people sign, because I don't know. I go by my locks. I have not dreadlock, they call sister locks. And when I started this project, they were like at my neck. Now they're at my butt. So it takes about 12, 13 years for your locks to go from your neck to your butt. So I would imagine it's 13, 14 years ago. And yes, I started out my intention was to do a documentary. And then as the years passed and passed, I was like, you know what? I should do a docu-series because I have so much footage. We should do a docu-series. So I was trying to raise money for the docu-series amongst the producers. And then we were going to do a crowdfunding. And then the crowdfunding right now is not what it used to be. Everybody's asking for money for something, this and that. And so it's just not as, so I was talking to one of my producers, the one who was a vice president at one of the networks. And she's the one who suggested, she said, you know what? I was thinking you should do a podcast. She said, you should take the audio from the footage that you have, and you should do a podcast.
I'm
And I was like,
against it. I am against it. A podcast will never work. Just kidding.
and I was like, that's a genius idea. And I
Yeah, it is.
got in touch with this editor who had just edited a web series that I had done last year. And she is an amazing editor. And she literally looked at all 55 hours of the footage that we had. We came up with storylines. She had listened to a lot of podcasts. So you'll notice in the first and second podcast, I'm doing two different characters. The first podcast, I was doing more like, upbeat PaSean. And then, she sent me like a sample of audio of what like kind of podcast we. So the second one, I sound like I'm kind of sleepy and taking my time with the words, and got sometimes a little southern comes in, sometimes a little something. So the third was gonna be a completely different character. So I think every podcast I'm gonna do a different character. But yeah, so she was such a help. She did the music. She came up with the music. She came up with the edits. She's just freaking awesome. Awesome. I couldn't have partnered with a better person. The quality is really, really good, and I'm very pleased with how it turned out.
Yeah, you sent me the first two episodes, which I listened to, and I think they're fantastic. And
Thank you.
I would tell you the truth.
I know you would. That's why I sent it to you.
I know you know me. We know each other, and I also I love the music. I love the music that was put in. I love the stories. I love the layering of the of
a great job.
of people. Yeah, they did a great job, and it's great when you have all that material and stories to tell, and especially with the amount of years you have, because you can always go back to some of these people and say, what happened since then.
Exactly. Actually, this producer who suggested I do the podcast, she's one of the women who went through a harrowing journey. She had a myomectomy. She actually was Dr. West's patient, the one who wrote the hysterectomy hoax, who gave me all the information and gave me access to all of his patients. She was one of his patients. And she ended up I interviewed her 10 years later, and you see her in the first interview. She has like, dark little short afro. She's just all bubbly and vibrant. And, yes, I want to have kids. And she ended up having myomectomy and another procedures. And then she had miscarriages and all of this drama. And then 10 years later, her hair is completely white. She ended up having to have a hysterectomy because of all the damage, and it was just, and there's quite a few women that I interviewed who are friends of mine, fellow actors, as a matter of fact, who, when I first interviewed them, they had a myomectomy or a uterine artery embolization, which is where they shoot radiated pellets through your veins and it cuts off the blood supply and the fibroid starts to degenerate. That's another procedure. And they ended up, 10 years later, some not even 10 years later, some 5 years later, having deciding to have a hysterectomy because they just body just kept growing fibroids. They just, and me, I'm older, so I'm past menopause and all of that stuff. So I have fibroids, but they're not growing. They don't bother me. I don't feel them. They're just sitting there. They're like, you know what? You tried to get rid of us, but we ain't going nowhere.
They're your roommates.
They're my roommates. That's why I call my original title for the documentary was "The Stranger Within."
Oh, wow.
Fibroid stories, because I was getting a visual of the alien when the thing pops out of her stomach. But another thing that I think is so interesting, and I haven't been able to find an epigeneticist yet, but epigeneticists, they basically are able to research and find commonalities that will lead them to conclusions of why certain people of certain races get certain
Right. This
diseases.
is what I wanted to ask
And
you.
yeah. And so I haven't interviewed one yet, but I know they've done studies with like Jewish people and Armenian people and stuff like that, and noticed like they get certain diseases and like put it together. And one of the main things they talk about is trauma, how trauma can alter your DNA. Trauma can alter your DNA and it just gets passed down from generation to generation. And so I really suspect that there's a strong connection between Black people and slavery and oppression or perceived oppression or whatever that has altered our DNA, because it makes so much sense that it would be our womb. We had no control of our womb. We were being raped. Our babies were being taken from us and sold to another plantation, and then just from generation to generation, just, that gene just being passed on. I really believe there's a connection between, yeah, and it's so funny, the women who get fibroids, other than Black women, because anybody who has estrogen can get it, but who have really bad symptoms. Jewish women, right under Black women. You got the Holocaust. You got everything that, Jewish people go through. You got Armenian women, Armenian genocide. They're also high on the list of people who get fibroids. I believe there's a connection. Years ago, I read this book called the Message in Water by this Japanese scientist. I can't remember the name of it, but if you Google The Message in Water, you can find this book. So what the book did is that he would take water, and he would say things, or not say things. He would put words on the water. So like love, peace, beauty, ugly, stupid, whatever. And then he would freeze the water. And then he would look at the crystals under the water. And the water that had the words beauty or love or some beautiful symbol would have these beautiful crystals, like you see, in Christmas time, like the snowflakes, beautiful. And the words that had the negative connotation would be these gnarled, ugly crystals. And so it makes sense to me in terms of fibroids and other diseases that people get. If our bodies are mostly water, and there's all this negative energy, that makes sense that could alter the DNA. But this was the kicker in that book. He would go back to the source of the water, wherever he got those water crystals from, and he would take that water again and freeze it, and it would be changed. That's the trippy part. So if it was the water source like a pond, and he took the water out and he put love on it and the crystals were beautiful, and he went back to that water, the crystal would still be beautiful. If he went to another source and he said, took that water out, right? Put the ugly word on it, froze it, and the crystal came out ugly, he would go back to that same water source, and that water source would then have a crystal that was ugly. even though you know what I'm saying?
It's so weird. Because this is a thing is, and this is we're getting totally metaphysical, which I love.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We are energy.
Yeah.
We are connection.
Yeah.
We have the ability to, our brains, I don't even remember what it is. Like we use like 10%,
Yeah.
9% of the
Yeah.
capacity of our brains.
Yeah.
And
I've heard
and
that.
that is why you can, if you picture something and you start feeling something, it is real because the brain activates this as a real. So we have the ability to abundantly bring it toward us.
Exactly.
In the reverse, what you're saying, if we get angry, it never happens for me. That person's, why is everyone so much luckier than I am? Blah, 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 blah. Then it doesn't, because our brain is creating an energy wall
Exactly.
of energy telling us, don't have it happen to me. Don't bring it to me.
And it makes sense when I talk to women in Africa, even though they didn't have the slave experience, they have fibroids too. So we came from that source, and it's like going back to that water source, and that has changed energetically. It's changed. It's a trippy book, but that's what, and I'm sure if I talk to an epigeneticist, if I could finally find one, I'm gonna find one. I'm putting it out in the universe, finding an epigeneticist, and they will have some theories about why women of color and Jewish women and Armenian women, we all have this you know predisposition to grow fibroids in our body. I definitely feel it has something to do with, our shared experiences of oppression.
If you could go back to PaSean years and years and years ago, now, specifically with this information, let's say right before, like you're making that first doctor's appointment, what
Mm-hmm.
would you tell that version of yourself?
Wow. When I first came here from New York, to be an actor, um, I had a lot of, I was excited, but I also had a lot of trepidation and fear. And I think fear kind of ruled my life for a lot of my younger years, and that is definitely one of the emotions that will make a woman produce estrogen. And I would just tell myself to chill. Everything works out for the best. Even if you feel it's not the best, create value out of whatever you do end up, whatever situation you do end up in. Turn poison into medicine. I would just be more chill. I was a very, just very, if I was a metronome, I would be going like 3,000 beats a minute. Just blah, 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 you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I would just be relaxed more. I was having problems in my marriage when I came here from New York, so I was stressed about that. The actor strike happened. The one of the long actor strike happened when I came here from New York, 22 years ago, I think it was. It was just a lot of, I had bought a brownstone in Brooklyn off my commercial money, and then the strike happened. How am I going to pay? It was just stress, 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 stress. So I would tell myself to work on finding things that would help me deal with stress better. That's what I would do. That's what I would tell myself.
We close these shows with 3 questions. You've answered them before. It's going to be a little different this time for you. Where can everybody find the podcast, The F Word?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm actually working on that today. I'm gonna actually have you help me and with some words of wisdom. I want to get it on Apple and I want to have it on Spotify. So it will be found on Apple and Spotify. And wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right.
That's what you say. That F word can be found on Apple and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, the final 2 questions you've answered before, I'm going to have you answer them again. First question is this: who inspires you?
Wow. That's a good question. You know what? I'm just go top of my head. I'm actually a practicing Buddhist with the SGI, Soka Gakkai International, which is Value Creating Society. And it's a lay Buddhist organization. We don't have any priests or anything like that. And Daisaku Ikeda, who recently passed away, is the founder of this organization. And he inspires me because he decided to take this little Japanese kind of religion, is actually started in India, but it was being practiced in this particular way in Japan, in little small communities. And after, Japan was bombed and, all kinds of negative things happened. I'm not going to say who was whose fault, but it happened. He decided, you know what? I'm going to go across the world. And one of the places I'm going to go is to the United States and tell them about this Buddhism that talks about human revolution, which means changing yourself. This Buddhism that talks about uh, trying to be happy, trying to be altruistic, and spread that. And just his open heart of not having any anger, because a lot of times when things have happened to certain races, you have this back of your head in your spirit a little anger about the person who did it to you. And the fact that he had no anger with America for what had happened and decided to come to America and spread this Buddhism, to me, is the way I want to live my life, because I hold on to some shit. I hold on to shit, and I really admire the fact that he didn't hold on to shit, and I admire him for that. So yeah.
The final question is not a question. It is a way to end the show, a statement to finish. Don't sing Shaka Khan. Don't sing Rufus. I can't afford it. Tell me something good.
Well, I'm excited about the podcast. I'm excited about putting it out there. I'm excited for people to hear it. I'm excited for it growing and spreading. I want to enter it into film festivals. I want to use it as a calling card to raise money to finish the actual docuseries. So I'm excited. I would say possibility. I'm excited by possibility. Possibility.
Thank you, PaSean, for sharing your good for the third time. Next time on World Gone Good.
You get 2 holidays, 2 holly jolly days. You get to have them both, you lucky boy. Christmas and Hanukkah, Baruch atah.
Well, you know what that music means. It means it's time for our 5th annual Holidays Gone Good episode. Can you believe it? It's the 5th time we're gathering together around the Christmas tree with some latkes to talk some good about the holidays. We've gathered a group of some of my favorite people and some new people, new friends I've made, who are ready to share the good of the holidays. So let's get merry, let's fa la 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 la, and all those good things coming your way on our very next good episode. Until then, be good.
'Cause tonight, a lot